Here's exactly where I would put my money every time I get paid, and why the order matters now more than ever, since everything seems to cost 30% more than it did 3 years ago. My name is Joe, and I spend way too much time thinking about money and why people make the financial decisions they do. If you've ever found yourself staring at your bank account wondering where it all went, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you get your financial house in order. Now, before we dive into the exact order you should move your money, let me paint you a picture of what's happening out there right now. You go to the grocery store and everything costs more than you remember. You fill up your gas tank and it feels like you're making a down payment on a small car. Your rent keeps creeping up every single year. And through all of this, your paycheck maybe grew 5% if you're lucky. This is the reality for millions of people right now, and it's not getting better anytime soon. But here's where it gets really interesting. Most people are responding to this by just hoping things will improve or cutting back on everything until they're miserable. And that's not the solution at all. The solution is being incredibly intentional about where every single dollar goes the moment it hits your account. Because here's the thing about money that most people don't realize. Money doesn't disappear by accident. It goes exactly where you direct it, either consciously or unconsciously. Most people are letting their money leak out in 100 different directions because they don't have a system. And the crazy part is having a system isn't even that complicated. It's just about making the same decisions every single time in the same order. So let's walk through exactly what I do with my money every time I get paid in the exact order I do it. And this order matters. Trust me, it matters a lot. The very first place your money should go is toward your essential bills and debt payments. I'm talking about your rent or mortgage, your car payment, your credit card minimums, your student loans, your utilities, your insurance, all the stuff that absolutely must get paid or your life gets significantly worse. Now, I know what some of these self-proclaimed financial gurus are going to tell you. They love to say that you should pay yourself first, that the moment your paycheck hits, you should immediately take some chunk of it and invest it or put it in savings and then figure out how to pay your bills with whatever is left. And I get the theory behind that. The idea is that by prioritizing saving and investing, you'll naturally cut back on your spending because you'll have to. But here's the reality that they're not telling you. Do you know what happens when you don't pay your mortgage? You get foreclosed on and they take your home. Do you know what happens when you don't pay your rent? You get evicted. Do you know what happens when you don't pay your credit card balance? You get hit with interest rates of 20% or more and your credit score gets destroyed. So I don't pay myself first, I pay my bills first because there are consequences for not paying your bills, and those consequences are serious. But here's something that most people don't understand about this step. Making these payments on time is about more than just keeping the lights on. Your credit score is calculated through 5 main factors, and the 2 biggest ones are your payment history and how much debt you're carrying relative to your credit limits. Those 2 factors alone make up 65% of your credit score. So every time you make a payment on time, you're not just avoiding late fees, you're building a financial reputation that will affect your ability to rent an apartment, get a mortgage, or even get a job in some industries. So this isn't just about survival, it's about positioning yourself for future opportunities. And in today's economy, having good credit is more valuable than ever because it gives you options when you need them most. But here's the thing that really gets me about this step. Most people think that as long as they're making their minimum payments, they're doing fine. But the minimum payment isn't designed to help you. It's designed to keep you in debt forever while extracting maximum interest from you. So while this step is about paying your bills, it's also about being aware of what you're actually paying. Know your interest rates, know how much of your payment is going toward principal versus interest. This awareness is what separates people who are just treading water from people who are actually making progress. You don't need a complex debt payoff plan for this step. You just need to make sure your automatic payments are set up so you never miss anything. We'll talk about more aggressive debt strategies later, but for now, just make sure the minimums are covered. Now, before we move on to the next step, I need to tell you about something that will make everything else we talk about 10 times easier. And this is the secret sauce that most people miss. You need to automate absolutely everything you possibly can. This is why it's so powerful. If you can set up automatic transfers for everything we're about to cover, you should do it. Because when you automate your finances, you're removing yourself from the equation entirely. And I mean that in a good way. Here's the psychology behind this. You can't spend money that you don't have access to. If the money moves automatically before it even hits your checking account, You're not relying on discipline or willpower or remembering to do things every single month. You're not having to make the same decisions over and over again. It just happens. And this is huge because human beings are terrible at consistency. We're great at motivation in the moment, but terrible at sustained behavior over time. Automation solves this problem by making the right thing happen by default. Most banks and brokerages let you schedule recurring transfers for free. So here's what I want you to do. Take 15 minutes after this video, review all the steps we're going to cover, and then set up automatic transfers for your money into their respective buckets. Your mortgage payment should be automatic. Your debt payments should be automatic. Your savings should be automatic. Once you get this right, your entire financial life runs on autopilot, and you barely have to think about it. The people I know who are most successful with money are the ones who've removed themselves from the equation as much as possible. They've built systems that make good decisions for them. And this is probably the single most important thing you can do for your financial future. But wait, let me explain why this matters so much more today than it did a few years ago. Everything is more expensive, your rent is higher, your groceries cost more, gas prices are ridiculous. And through all of this, most people's incomes haven't kept up. The old advice of just being careful with your spending doesn't work as well when inflation is eating away at your purchasing power. You need to be more intentional. You need to be more systematic. You need every dollar working for you instead of leaking away. Now let's move on to step 3, which is where you need to be really honest with yourself. After your essential bills are paid, you need to set aside money for your monthly operating budget. This is different from your emergency fund, which we'll talk about in a moment. This is the money you need to live your daily life. And I want you to actually run the numbers here because most people have no idea what they're actually spending. Think about it this way. Your rent or mortgage is probably the biggest expense. Let's say that's $1,700 a month. Then you've got utilities, maybe $300, car payment, insurance, groceries, cell phone, internet. Before you know it, you're looking at roughly $2,900 a month just to keep your life running. And that's not even counting anything fun. That's just the basics. So if you're getting paid twice a month, you need to have at least $1,450 from each paycheck just to cover your essentials. And honestly, I like to keep a buffer of maybe $300 to $400 on top of that because life happens. But here's where most people get this wrong. They confuse needs with wants. And I know that everyone says this, but very few people actually do it. Your rent is a need, your groceries are a need, your utilities are a need. DoorDash and Uber Eats and Starbucks are not needs. They're conveniences, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying those things, but you need to be honest about what they are. When you're setting up your monthly operating budget, you should be thinking about the 50-30-20 rule if you can swing it. 50% to needs, 30% to wants, 20% to savings and investing. Now, I know that's not realistic for everyone, especially if you live in a high cost of living area. Maybe your needs are 60% and everything else has to squeeze into the remaining 40%. Or maybe you're in a lower cost area and your needs are only 40%, which gives you more flexibility. The point isn't to hit some perfect percentage. The point is to actually know your numbers and be intentional about them. And here's something that will absolutely blow your mind about budgeting. When you actually write down everything you spend money on and categorize it, you will almost always find that one category is completely out of control. It's like a black hole that just sucks up way more of your money than you realized. I've seen this with every single person I've ever helped with their finances. For one person, it's dining out. They think they're spending $200 a month on restaurants, but it's actually $800. For another person, it's entertainment or alcohol or shopping or their car or their significant other. There is always something, and you won't find it until you actually track your spending. This is why I keep everything in a spreadsheet. I review my income and expenses every single month. And I can tell you that this is a game changer. It's like turning on the lights in a room you've been stumbling around in the dark. Suddenly, you can see exactly where your money is going, and you can make informed decisions about whether that's actually where you want it to go. But here's the thing about the monthly operating budget that most people don't get. This money needs to stay separate from your emergency fund. Your monthly operating budget is for your regular, predictable expenses. Your emergency fund is for when life decides to throw you a curveball. And trust me, life will throw you a curveball. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Which brings us to step 4. After you've covered your bills and set aside money for your monthly expenses, you absolutely must build an emergency fund. And I'm going to be real with you about this. This is the thing that should probably come before you start aggressively investing, because here's the reality. If you don't have an emergency fund, you are one unexpected expense away from financial disaster. Your car breaks down, your laptop dies, you lose your job, your pet needs emergency surgery. These things happen, and if you don't have money set aside for them, they don't just become expenses. They become crises that force you into debt or force you to make terrible decisions because you're desperate. Now, a few years ago, most financial experts would have told you that 3 months of living expenses is enough for your emergency fund. But I'm going to tell you that's not enough anymore. With all the economic volatility we're seeing, with inflation eating away at everyone's savings, with layoffs happening across multiple industries, you should be aiming for 4 to 6 months of expenses. So if your monthly needs cost you $2,500, that means your emergency fund target should be somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000. I know that sounds like a lot. And if it feels overwhelming, set an intermediate goal first. Get your first $5,000 and then work your way up from there. Something is better than nothing. But here's where it gets interesting. In 2023 and 2024, high yield savings accounts were paying 4 to 5% interest. That was actually pretty good. But now you're looking at maybe 3 to 3.5% depending on the bank. That's still way better than the 0.1% you get from a traditional savings account, but it's not what it used to be. And as interest rates slowly come down over the next few years, we're going to have to get creative about where we keep this money. For now, though, a high yield savings account is still your best bet. You want your emergency fund to be completely liquid, which means you can access it immediately whenever you need it. This isn't money you're trying to maximize returns on. This is money you're keeping safe and accessible for when life happens. But here's something that most people don't understand about emergency funds. The vast majority of people who build up a solid emergency fund never actually spend it on emergencies. They keep it there year after year. And that's not a waste, because the value of an emergency fund isn't in using it. It's in knowing it's there. It's in the peace of mind that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you. It changes how you sleep at night. It changes the decisions you're willing to make at work because you're not desperate. It changes how you approach opportunities because you're not terrified of risking your financial security. This psychological benefit is impossible to quantify, but it's absolutely real. Once you have your emergency fund in place, that's when things get exciting. Because now you're ready to start investing for your future in a serious way. And step 5 is all about your retirement accounts. Now, about 2/3 of the people watching this are probably in the United States where we have 401k plans. But if you're in the UK, you have workplace pensions. Australia has superannuation. Canada has RRSPs. Whatever country you're in, the principles are exactly the same. You want to be taking advantage of tax-advantaged retirement accounts before you do anything else with your investment money. Here's why this matters so much. In 2026, the 401k contribution limit is $24,500 per year if you're under 50, or $32,500 if you're 50 or older. Now, I know that not everyone can max that out, and that's okay. A good goal to shoot for is contributing 10 to 15% of your paycheck toward retirement. But here's the non-negotiable part. If your employer offers a matching contribution, you need to contribute at least enough to get the full match, because that is literally free money. Your employer is giving you money just for putting money into your own retirement account. Do not leave that on the table. It's one of the few guaranteed returns you'll ever find in investing. But here's what most people don't realize about the power of starting early. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say you contribute 10% of a $75,000 salary to your 401k. That's $7,500 per year. If you invest that consistently for 40 years in the S&P 500, averaging 8% annually, you're looking at about $2.1 million by the time you retire. And here's the crazy part. Most of that money isn't even the money you contributed. It's the compound growth working for you over decades. This is why starting in your 20s is so incredibly powerful. Time is your biggest ally when it comes to investing. The earlier you start, the more time your money has to grow. But there's a trade-off here that you need to understand. Money you put into a 401k or similar retirement account isn't supposed to be touched until you reach retirement age, which is usually around 59 and a half. If you withdraw it early, you're going to pay penalties and taxes. And I know some people worry about this. They worry about locking up their money when they might need it for something else. And I get that. But this is why your emergency fund is so important. Once you have that emergency fund in place, you can afford to lock up some money for retirement because you're not going to need it for emergencies. The two work together. Beyond the employer match, if you want to save even more in your 401k, that's great. But honestly, there are some other things you might want to consider first before you go all in on your 401k. And that brings us to step 6. After you've taken advantage of your retirement accounts, now we need to talk about high interest debt. And I want to be really clear about what I mean by high interest. We're talking about anything above 15%. Usually this means credit card debt, but it could also be some personal loans or other types of consumer debt. This stuff is an emergency, and you need to treat it like one. Now, there are two main methods that people use to pay off debt, and both of them have their fans. The first is called the avalanche method. With this approach, you focus on paying off the debt with the highest interest rate first, regardless of the balance. You make minimum payments on everything else, and you throw every extra dollar you have at the highest interest debt. From a purely mathematical standpoint, this is the optimal strategy. You pay the least amount of interest overall, and you get out of debt the fastest. But here's the problem with the avalanche method. It can be psychologically brutal. If your highest interest debt is also your largest balance, you might be making payments on it for months or even years without seeing it disappear. And that can be incredibly demotivating. This is why some people prefer the snowball method. With the snowball method, you ignore interest rates entirely and focus on balances. You pay off your smallest debt first, then the next smallest, and so on. The idea is that you build momentum by knocking out entire debts one by one. Every time you pay off a debt completely, you get a psychological win that keeps you motivated. So which one should you use? Honestly, it depends on who you are. If you're the type of person who is motivated by math and optimization, the avalanche method will work better for you. If you're the type of person who needs to see progress to stay motivated, the snowball method might be better. Or you can try both and see which one feels right. The most important thing is that you're making progress. But here's a question I get all the time. Should you invest while you still have debt? And the answer is, it depends on the interest rate. If your debt has an interest rate below 4 to 6%, it might actually make financial sense to invest while you're carrying that debt. Here's why. If you can earn 8 to 10% in the stock market, but you're only paying 4% on your student loans, investing is mathematically the better choice. You're effectively making a spread of 4 to 6% by investing instead of paying off debt early. But here's the thing that most financial gurus won't tell you. This isn't just about math, it's about psychology. Some people hate having debt with a burning passion. For those people, paying off debt early gives them peace of mind that's worth more than the potential investment returns. And that's completely valid. I personally don't like carrying debt if I can avoid it. But I know plenty of people who are comfortable carrying low interest debt while they invest their money elsewhere. Neither approach is wrong. The key is knowing yourself and making the decision that's right for you, not what Reddit or some financial influencer tells you is right. Once you've handled your high interest debt, now we're getting to the fun part. Step 7 is investing beyond your retirement accounts. And this is where the real wealth building happens for most people. Here's the order I recommend for most people. First, get your 401k match if you have one. Then, max out your Roth IRA if you're eligible. Then, either max out your 401k further or start investing in a taxable brokerage account. And there's a reason for this order. Roth IRAs are incredible if you can use them. You contribute money that you've already paid taxes on, and then your money grows tax-free. When you withdraw it in retirement, you don't pay any taxes on the growth or the earnings. In 2026, you can contribute $7,500 per year to a Roth IRA if you're under 50, or $8,600 if you're 50 or older. And the growth in this account can be massive over decades. This is why I tend to put my highest growth investments in my Roth IRA. Things like growth ETFs or individual stocks that could potentially double or triple over time, because if they do, all of that growth is tax-free. That's incredibly powerful. But once you've maxed out your Roth IRA, where do you go next? You have two main options. You can contribute more to your 401k beyond the match, or you can open a taxable brokerage account. And honestly, both are good options depending on your situation. A taxable brokerage account gives you more flexibility. There are no contribution limits. You can access your money whenever you want without penalties, and you can invest in basically anything, but you don't get any special tax treatment. When you sell investments for a profit, you're going to pay capital gains taxes. Now, here's the thing about taxable accounts that most people don't understand. The tax treatment depends on how long you hold your investments. If you buy a stock and sell it within the same year for a profit, you're going to pay taxes at your ordinary income tax rate, which could be as high as 37%. That's brutal. But if you hold the same stock for more than a year before selling it, you qualify for long-term capital gains rates, which are between 0 and 20%. That's a huge difference. So in your taxable account, I tend to stick with tax-efficient investments like index funds that track the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq. They have low fees, they're reliable, and they don't generate a lot of taxable events. But here's the secret to successful investing that almost everyone misses. It's not about finding the perfect investment or timing the market perfectly. It's about consistency. If you invest consistently every single month, even if you're not optimizing everything perfectly, you will come out way ahead of someone who doesn't invest at all. The people I know who have built the most wealth aren't the ones who made a few brilliant stock picks. They're the ones who invested boring amounts of money in boring investments month after month for years. Consistency beats brilliance every time. Now, if you've made it this far, you're doing better than most people. You're paying your bills, you have an emergency fund, you're investing for retirement, you're handling your debt, you're building taxable investments. That's incredible. But here's step 8, and this is where things get really interesting. Once you've got all the basics covered, it's time to think about diversifying your income. Because here's the reality that more people need to understand. Relying on a single income source is incredibly risky in today's economy. I've seen the statistics. About 65% of self-made millionaires have at least 3 streams of income. And when you think about it, this makes complete sense. If you lose your job and that's your only income source, you're in trouble. But if you have 3 different income streams and you lose one, you're still okay. You have time to figure things out without your life falling apart. And we've seen this play out over the past few years. Layoffs in tech, AI reshaping entire industries, economic uncertainty around every corner. The people who are going to be okay through all of this are the ones who diversified their income, not just their investments. Now, you don't need to work 80 hours a week to build additional income streams, but if you can dedicate just 1 to 5 hours per week to building something on the side, that can be an extra 100, 200, 500, maybe even $1,000 per month. And that extra money can change your financial trajectory completely. Because here's the beautiful part about side income. Every dollar you earn from a side hustle can be funneled back into steps 1 through 7. You can grow your emergency fund faster, you can max out your Roth IRA, you can pay off debt more quickly. It all compounds. So what kind of side income streams make sense? Here are some options that actually work for real people. Freelancing or consulting in your area of expertise. If you're really good at something at your main job, chances are there are people who will pay you to help them with it. Copywriting, graphic design, programming, marketing, whatever you're good at. Another option is dividend income through dividend-paying stocks. This isn't going to make you rich overnight, but over time, it can become a meaningful income stream. Content creation is another path. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, a newsletter, it takes time to build. But once you have an audience, there are multiple ways to monetize. Some people start online businesses or Etsy stores. I know people who sell handmade jewelry or digital products, or who offer services through their own websites. Teaching or coaching is another option. If you're really good at something, whether it's fitness, music, academics, or pretty much anything else, there are people who will pay you to teach them. And then there's real estate, whether that's rental properties or REITs. This one obviously requires more capital to get started, but it's a proven path to wealth for many people. But here's the thing about building additional income streams that most people don't understand. It's not about making money right now. It's about investing in your future self. Every hour you spend building a side hustle is an investment in creating options for yourself down the road. Maybe that side hustle grows into something that replaces your main income. Maybe it just provides extra security. Either way, you're better off for having done it. Let me be real about something though. I know that for a lot of people watching this, all of this might feel overwhelming. You might be thinking that there's no way you can do all of this because you're barely getting by as it is. And to those people, I want to say 2 things. First, don't try to do everything at once. Start with what you can do. If you can only handle steps 1 and 2 right now, that's fine. If you can only start with an emergency fund and nothing else, that's still progress. Something is better than nothing. The person who saves $50 per month is way ahead of the person who saves nothing. But here's the second thing, and this is important. At some point, you're going to hit a wall where you can't cut expenses anymore. There's only so much you can cut before you're living a miserable life. And that's when you need to start thinking about the other side of the equation. You need to figure out how to make more money. And the single best way to do that, in my experience, is to find a higher paying job. Now, I know what some people are going to say. They're going to tell you to start a side hustle or become a freelancer or learn a new skill or do gig work. And those things can work. But if you want the best return on your time and energy, finding a better job is usually the answer. And here's the secret that most people don't realize. The best time to find a job is when you already have one. Because when you're unemployed and desperate, you're going to settle. You're going to take whatever you can get because you need money now. But when you have a job, you have nothing to lose. You can be selective. You can walk into interviews confident because you don't desperately need the job. You can negotiate better because you're not afraid of losing the offer. And if an employer doesn't want to pay you what you're worth, you can walk away. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with your current employer, but there's also no loyalty in the corporate world. Your company will lay you off whenever it's convenient for them. You should leave when it's convenient for you. And sometimes the best way to get a raise is to get a job offer from another company and then use that as leverage. You go to your current employer and say, hey, I have an offer for 30% more pay, match it, or I'm leaving. And suddenly they might find money in the budget that they didn't know they had. So here's my question for you. How proactive have you been about finding a better job? How much time have you spent looking at job postings? How current is your resume? How many jobs have you applied for in the past month? Most people spend more time looking at houses they can't afford online or planning vacations they can't pay for than they spend looking for better employment opportunities. And that's a mistake. The truth is, building wealth isn't about some secret strategy that rich people know and poor people don't. It's about doing a handful of boring things consistently over a long period of time. Pay your bills, automate your savings, build an emergency fund, invest in tax-advantaged accounts, pay off high-interest debt, invest for the long term. Diversify your income. These aren't secrets. These are fundamentals. But here's the thing about fundamentals. They work. Every single time. If you're watching this and you feel like you're behind, don't panic. You're not behind. You're exactly where you are, and you can start from wherever that is. The person who starts today is way ahead of the person who keeps putting it off. Start with what you can do. Build the habit. Let the habit become your identity, and watch how your life changes over time. Because here's the thing that nobody tells you about getting your financial house in order. It's not just about the money, it's about who you become in the process. You become someone who takes responsibility for your life, someone who plans ahead, someone who doesn't just react to whatever life throws at you. You become the kind of person who makes things happen instead of just letting things happen to you. And that transformation is worth more than any amount of money you could possibly accumulate. So that's exactly what I do every time I get paid, in exactly that order. And if you found this helpful, make sure to hit that subscribe button because I put out content like this every single week to help you take control of your financial life.